Hi, I'm Elena. I built a quiet life of success while my sister Maya flaunted mediocrity wrapped in designer clothes. When she called me a pathetic loser at her engagement party, I smiled and walked away. 3 days later, her fiancé's boss walked into my office for a meeting. The look on her face when he said, "Elena, I've heard so much about your company," was worth every holiday I spent alone. That night, I couldn't sleep. The next week, Maya showed up at my door and said, "I think we need to talk about what happened." I handed her a gift bag. Inside, a framed photo of me with her fiancé's entire executive team and my business card. CEO, Altura Technologies. Before we jump back in, tell us where you're tuning in from, and if this story touches you, make sure you're subscribed, because tomorrow I've saved something extra special for you. But what hurt more than the insult was that no one in my family ever asked why. Before we dive in, what time are you listening and where from? Drop it in the comments because what you're about to hear isn't just family drama. It's about reclaiming your worth. And it changed everything. I handed her a framed photo. One single photo that captured everything she'd missed. That sentence had been circling in my mind for days now. Quiet, weighty, final. I didn't slam the door. I didn't scream. I didn't burn bridges. I handed her that photo and watched realization dawn across her face. It's funny, the frame cost more than what she thought I was worth. The memory resurfaced this morning when I found an old business card tucked between pages of my journal. A simple cream cardstock with embossed lettering. Elena Reyes, founder. And CEO, Altura Technologies. Beside it, a sticky note with First 50 scrawled in my handwriting. Those cards had cost nearly a week's grocery budget back then. I'd been so proud, running my fingers over the raised letters, imagining handing them to potential clients with steady hands instead of trembling ones. 5 years ago, I'd been sitting in a rented office space with mismatched furniture and industrial carpet that still smelled faintly of the previous tenant's cologne. My desk was actually a door laid across 2 filing cabinets. A Pinterest hack born of necessity rather than aesthetic. But I had my first major client signed. We'd secured a $150,000 contract for customized inventory management software. I was exhausted, exhilarated, and terrified in equal measure. That was the day I started believing maybe, just maybe, I wasn't crazy for walking away from a stable job at Meridian Tech to build something authentic. 3 weeks later, the invitation arrived. Maya was getting engaged to Darius Whitney, son of real estate developers with connections stretching from San Diego to Boston. The celebration would be at the Azurage estate, where crystal chandeliers hung over marble floors and waiters appeared with champagne flutes before you realized you were thirsty. I remembered staring at the invitation, the heavyweight cardstock, with gold foil edging mocking my DIY business cards. The RSVP card asked for dietary restrictions and +1 details. I had neither food allergies nor a date. What I did have was a client deadline that same weekend, and dwindling savings that didn't accommodate designer dresses suitable for such venues. I texted Maya, "Not sure I can make it. Big project deadline." Her response came 3 minutes later. "Mom says you have to come. Family obligation." No congratulations asked for, none offered. It had been this way since we were children. Maya, the golden child with perfect hair and effortless charm, 2 years my senior but somehow always centered in every family narrative. Me, the serious one with glasses who read too much and spoke too little, the reliable sister, the responsible one, the boring one. I spent that night staring at code on my laptop screen, the characters blurring as I calculated how many billable hours I'd lose attending this event versus the emotional cost of another family confrontation. Eventually, I RSVP'd yes, alone. No dietary restrictions. The night of the engagement party arrived with unexpected spring rain. I'd found a simple black dress on clearance. Modest, forgettable, serviceable. I pulled my dark hair into what I hoped was an elegant knot and applied minimal makeup. The goal wasn't to stand out, it was to fulfill my obligation without drawing attention. The Azurage estate loomed ahead as my rideshare pulled through wrought iron gates. Light spilled from every window, illuminating manicured gardens where white tents protected guests mingling with cocktails. I tipped the driver generously, a small rebellion against my tightening budget, and stepped out into the mild evening air. Name? A tuxedoed attendant stood beside an illuminated tablet. Elena Reyes. He scrolled briefly. Ah, family table. Through the main entrance, across the ballroom, table 14. I nodded my thanks and followed his directions, clutching my small purse like armor. Crystal glasses clinked. Laughter bubbled over string quartet music. Perfumes mingled in the air. I recognized few faces, distant cousins, some family friends, but mostly strangers in expensive clothes eyeing each other with practiced interest. Mom spotted me first, waving frantically from across the room. She wore teal silk that complemented her complexion, her hair freshly highlighted. Dad stood beside her, uncomfortable in his tuxedo but beaming with paternal pride. You made it! Mom pulled me into a hug that smelled of Chanel No. 5. We were beginning to worry. The Whitneys have already arrived. Traffic, I lied, returning her embrace briefly. The party looks beautiful. Maya outdid herself planning everything. Wait until you see the dessert table, hand-painted chocolate with edible gold. She lowered her voice conspiratorially. The flowers alone cost more than your father's first car. Preparing and narrating this story took us a lot of time, so if you are enjoying it, subscribe to our channel. It means a lot to us. Now back to the story. I smiled politely, scanning the room for my sister. I spotted her near the center, radiant in ivory satin that caught the light with every movement. Her engagement ring, a solitaire diamond the size of a small grape, flashed as she gestured animatedly to the cluster of people surrounding her. Darius stood beside her, tall and conventionally handsome in a tailored suit, laughing on cue. Should I go congratulate them? I asked. Mom's expression tightened slightly. Maybe wait until they come to our table. Maya's entertaining Darius's boss right now. Very important connection for his career. Translation. Don't embarrass us by interrupting important people. I nodded and followed my parents to table 14, where distant cousins and a family friend I barely recognized were already seated. I made appropriate small talk, answered inevitable questions about my computer job with deliberately vague responses, and sipped water instead of champagne to keep my mind clear. An hour passed before Maya made her way to our table. Darius, in tow. She air-kissed each family member, saving me for last. Elena, you actually came. Her smile didn't reach her eyes. And in that dress, how practical. I returned her air kiss. Congratulations, Maya. The party is lovely. Isn't it? Darius's mother helped with the planning. She has connections with all the best vendors. She turned to her fiancé. Darling, you remember my sister, Elena. Darius extended his hand. Of course. The computer girl, right? Making websites or something? Software development, I corrected gently. Custom enterprise solutions. His eyes glazed over immediately. Fascinating. Maya mentioned you were always good with numbers and technical things. Maya laughed lightly. Elena always preferred computers to people. Remember how she missed prom to work on some coding competition? It was a national science fair, I corrected again. My project on algorithm efficiency won a scholarship. See what I mean? Maya stage whispered to Darius, always the serious one. The conversation shifted to wedding plans, venue options, catering tastings, honeymoon destinations. I listened quietly, offering congratulations when appropriate. Eventually, a silver-haired man in an impeccably tailored suit approached our table. Darius, there you are. His voice carried authority without volume. The Hendersons are asking. about that property in La Jolla. Darius straightened immediately. Mr. Blackwood, of course. Maya, this is James Blackwood, CEO of Meridian Investments. He turned to the older man. Sir, this is my fiancé, Maya Reyes, and her family. My stomach tightened at the company name. Meridian Investments was among the largest commercial real estate investment firms on the West Coast. They managed billions in assets and had recently expanded into tech-enabled property management, exactly the market I was targeting with Altura. Mr. Blackwood nodded politely to everyone before his gaze settled on me. And you are? Before I could answer, Maya cut in. That's just my sister, Elena. She does something with computers. She laughed that practiced musical laugh. The family's pathetic loser who couldn't handle a real career, so she plays with her little startup in a rented office. She'll probably be looking for a job soon when reality sets in. The table fell silent. Mom's smile froze. Dad stared intently at his plate. Darius shifted uncomfortably. I felt heat rising to my face, but kept my expression neutral. Mr. Blackwood's eyebrows rose slightly, but he merely nodded. I see. Well, Darius, shall we? They moved away, Maya following after pressing a quick kiss to my cheek and whispering, No offense, sis, just keeping it real. I sat perfectly still, breathing slowly and deliberately. Mom reached across the table and patted my hand. She doesn't mean it, honey. She's just excited about everything. I know, I said automatically, though we both knew it was a lie. 30 minutes later, I made my excuses and left. No dramatic exit, no confrontation, just a quiet departure with promises to call soon. In the back of another rideshare, I watched raindrops race down the window and thought about algorithms, probability, and the predictable patterns of family dynamics. That night, I worked until 3 a.m., furiously coding as if each line was a shield against Maya's words. When I finally slept, I dreamed of open doors and empty rooms. 3 days later, I sat in my office reviewing quarterly projections when my assistant knocked gently on the doorframe. Elena? Your 2 p.m. is here. Mr. Blackwood from Meridian Investments. I blinked, certain I'd misheard. James Blackwood? Yes. Should I show him in? I glanced around my office, no longer a door on filing cabinets, but a proper space with clean lines and minimal decoration. Professional, if not lavish. Yes, please. And bring coffee. James Blackwood entered with the confident stride of someone accustomed to being the most important person in any room. He wore a different suit than at the engagement party, but carried the same air of understated wealth. I stood and extended my hand. Mr. Blackwood, welcome to Altura Technologies. He shook my hand firmly. Ms. Reyes, thank you for agreeing to meet on such short notice. Of course. Please, have a seat. I gestured to the chairs arranged around a small conference table rather than across my desk. Less hierarchical, more collaborative. How can I help you today? He settled into a chair, declining coffee with a small wave. I'll be direct, Ms. Reyes. After our brief encounter at your sister's engagement party, I was curious about this little startup of hers. A colleague mentioned your company had developed an interesting property management system integrating AI-driven predictive maintenance. I kept my expression professional, hiding my surprise. Yes, that's one of our core offerings. We've found it reduces maintenance costs by approximately 23% while extending equipment lifespan. Impressive. He leaned forward slightly. I've reviewed your company profile. 28 employees, $3 million in revenue last year, and a client retention rate of 94%. Hardly a little startup on its last legs. I allowed myself a small smile. We've been fortunate to find product-market fit quickly. Fortune favors the prepared, Ms. Reyes. He opened his briefcase and removed a folder. Meridian is considering a significant upgrade to our property management systems across our portfolio. Your solution has been shortlisted along with 2 others. I wanted to meet personally before proceeding further. The meeting continued for nearly 2 hours. We discussed technical specifications, integration timelines, and customization options. I walked him through our development process, security protocols, and client support structure. By the time he stood to leave, we'd outlined preliminary terms for what would be Altura's largest contract to date, potentially worth over $8 million. At the door, he paused. Your sister's assessment was inaccurate. I maintained eye contact. Family often sees us through lenses ground long ago, Mr. Blackwood. Indeed. He extended his hand again. I look forward to working with you, Ms. Reyes. After he left, I sat at my desk for several minutes, staring at nothing in particular. Then I laughed, a quiet, private sound that filled my office like sunlight. That evening, my phone vibrated with a text from Maya. Hey sis, need to talk. Coffee tomorrow? I didn't respond immediately. Instead, I opened my laptop and began drafting implementation strategies for the Meridian contract. When I finally replied hours later, I kept it simple. Sure, my office at 10. The next morning, I arrived early and instructed my assistant to prepare the conference room, the good one we used for major clients, with the view of the bay and the expensive coffee machine. I placed a small gift bag on the table and waited. Maya arrived at 10:15, dressed casually but expensively in designer jeans and a silk blouse that probably cost more than my first month's office rent. She air-kissed my cheek and looked around appreciatively. Nice place. Definitely an upgrade from that closet you were renting last year. Thank you. I gestured to a chair. Coffee? God, yes. Late night with wedding vendors. She accepted the artisan brew with a grateful sigh. So, about the engagement party. I waited, sipping my own coffee. Darius was kind of upset about what I said, about you being a pathetic loser and all that. She waved her hand dismissively. You know how I get when I'm nervous. It didn't mean anything. Didn't it? She blinked, surprised by my direct question. Come on, Elena, it was a joke. Besides, I was trying to help you save face. Everyone there was so successful. I didn't want you feeling awkward about your little business compared to what they do. I see. Maya shifted in her seat, uncomfortable with my brevity. Anyway, I think we need to talk about what happened. Darius mentioned his boss asked about you afterward. Did he call you or something? Yes. Her eyes widened slightly. What did he want? I slid the gift bag across the table. See for yourself. Frowning, she reached into the bag and pulled out a silver frame. Inside was a photo taken yesterday. Me standing between James Blackwood and the Meridian executive team, all of us holding champagne glasses in a toast. Clipped to the corner was my business card. Elena Reyes, founder and CEO, Altura Technologies. Maya stared at the photo, then at me. I don't understand. Meridian Investments just signed an $8 million contract with my company. The pathetic loser your fiancé's boss is now partnering with. The color drained from her face. $8 million? But your little coding thing. My little coding thing employs 28 people and generated $3 million in revenue last year. Next year will be significantly higher. I kept my voice even. Mr. Blackwood was quite surprised by your characterization of my business. Maya set down the frame, her hand trembling slightly. Elena, I had no idea. Why didn't you ever tell us you were doing so well? I did. Many times. At Christmas dinner, I mentioned our expansion. At Dad's birthday, I talked about hiring developers. Last Thanksgiving, I explained our new product line. I met her gaze directly. No one listened. You all were too busy discussing your latest shopping trip or Darius's family connections. She flinched. That's not fair. Isn't it? I leaned back in my chair. When was the last time you asked me about my work? Not as a polite afterthought, but with genuine interest. Maya's eyes dropped to her lap. The silence stretched between us, filled with years of asymmetrical attention and assumed hierarchies. Finally, she looked up. I'm sorry. I really am. I just always thought. You were always so quiet, so serious. I never imagined you building something like this. That's the problem, Maya. You never imagined me at all. She reached across the table, her fingers stopping short of touching mine. Can we start over? I want to know about your company. Really? I studied her face, the familiar features arranged in an unfamiliar expression of humility. Part of me wanted to refuse, to protect the success I'd built without her support. But another part, smaller but persistent, remembered building sandcastles together as children, before roles solidified and paths diverged. I have a meeting in 20 minutes, I said finally. But I'm free for dinner next Wednesday. If you're interested, I can show you what we're working on. Our relief washed across her face. Yes, I'd like that. As she stood to leave, she paused at the door. Elena, for what it's worth, I'm proud of you. I should have been all along. I nodded, neither accepting nor rejecting her belated recognition. Wednesday at 7. Don't be late. After she left, I turned to the window overlooking the city. 5 years ago, I'd stood in a rented office with industrial carpeting, holding my first batch of business cards like talismans. Now I stood in the corner office of a building where my company's name was displayed in the lobby. The journey between those 2 points hadn't been linear or easy. It had been filled with doubts, setbacks, and moments of bone-deep fatigue. But never once had I considered myself a pathetic loser. That had been Maya's narrative, not mine. I picked up the framed photo, running my fingers over the glass. Success wasn't about proving others wrong, though that had its satisfactions. It was about proving yourself right, day after day, decision after decision. My phone buzzed with a calendar alert. 10 minutes until my next meeting. I placed the frame on my desk where light caught the embossed letters of my business card. Then I gathered my notes and walked toward the conference room, each step measured and purposeful. The path forward wasn't about forgiveness or vindication. It was about building something lasting from the ground up, whether that was a company or a relationship. And I had always been good at building things that endured. Wednesday arrived with unexpected clarity. I woke before my alarm, the pale, morning light filtering through my blinds, casting geometric patterns across my bedroom floor. I'd always been an early riser, a habit born from necessity rather than preference. The quietest hours belonged to those willing to claim them, and I'd built Altura in those stolen moments before the world demanded attention. I followed my usual routine: 30 minutes of yoga, a quick shower, overnight oats with berries, and a review of international markets while my coffee brewed. Simple rhythms that grounded me regardless of what chaos the day might bring. Today would bring Maya, which historically meant unpredictability. My phone buzzed with a text from my COO, Vivian. Final revisions on Meridian contract just came in. Looking good. Celebratory drinks this weekend? I smiled and replied affirmatively. Vivian had been my third hire, joining when Altura operated. From a co-working space with unreliable Wi-Fi and ambitions that outpaced our resources. She'd believed in my vision when it was still more blueprint than reality. Unlike Maya, who only saw value in things already built. I pushed the thought away as I dressed for the day. Charcoal pencil skirt, cream silk blouse, simple gold earrings. Professional without ostentation. The costume of capability I'd curated carefully over years of being underestimated in rooms. Full of men who assumed my youth and gender made me easy to dismiss. My office hummed with activity when I arrived. Developers huddled around whiteboards covered in flowcharts. Account managers conducted client calls in glass-walled meeting rooms. The operations team reviewed deployment schedules with focused intensity. I greeted everyone by name as I passed, noting the easy confidence with which they worked. This wasn't just my company, it was theirs too. A shared vision brought to life through collective effort. By mid-afternoon, I'd reviewed quarterly projections, approved a new hire for the UX team, and finalized presentation materials for an upcoming industry conference. I was deep in code review when my assistant, Tomas, appeared at my door. "Elena? Your sister called. She wanted to confirm dinner tonight." I glanced at the clock. 3:17 p.m. Did she say anything else? "Just that she's looking forward to it." "Oh, and she asked if it was dressy." I told her business casual should be fine. I nodded, suppressing a smile. Maya's version of business casual probably involved designer, labels, and statement accessories. "Thanks, Thomas. I'll be heading out around 6. The restaurant I'd chosen was neither pretentious nor casual, a modern bistro with excellent food and minimal scene-making. The kind of place where conversations weren't interrupted by Instagram influencers posing with elaborate cocktails. I arrived 15 minutes early and requested a corner table where we could speak without being overheard. To my surprise, Maya arrived on time. She wore a simple black dress with minimal jewelry, subdued by her standards. Her eyes darted around the restaurant, taking in details with the practiced assessment of someone accustomed to calculating social value based on surroundings. "This is nice," she said as she settled into her chair. "I've never been here before. Chef Marcos trained in Barcelona before opening this place. The paella is exceptional." She studied my face. "You seem different. More, I don't know, settled." "I am who I've always been, Maya. You're just seeing me clearly for the first time in a while." A flicker of discomfort crossed her features, but she recovered quickly. "Fair enough. So, tell me about Altura. What exactly do you do?" I considered deflecting with the simplified explanation I gave at family gatherings, vague references to software solutions and digital infrastructure that invited no follow-up questions. Instead, I decided to answer honestly. We develop adaptive enterprise systems that integrate predictive analytics with legacy infrastructure. Essentially, we help large companies make their existing technology smarter without replacing everything. Our specialty is creating systems that learn from usage patterns and anticipate needs before they become problems. Maya blinked. "That sounds complicated." It is, but the complexity solves real problems for our clients. The Meridian contract, for example, will reduce their maintenance costs by millions while extending equipment lifespans significantly. And you? Built this? From scratch? I designed the core architecture. We have brilliant developers who bring the vision to life, of course. No one builds anything meaningful entirely alone. The waiter approached with menus, and conversation paused while we ordered. Roasted beet salad and sea bass for me, arugula with prosciutto, and the chef's special for Maya. She requested wine recommendations with the easy confidence of someone accustomed to fine dining experiences. After the waiter departed, Maya leaned forward. "I've been thinking about what you said, about no one listening when you talked about your work." I waited, maintaining eye contact but offering no easy absolution. "You were right," she continued. "I never really paid attention. I always thought you were just doing your thing, being Elena. I didn't understand what that meant." "Why would you?" I kept my tone neutral. "Your measure of success has always been visibility. Who sees you? Who knows you? Who envies you? Mine has been impact. What problems I solve, what systems I improve, what value I create." Maya flinched slightly. "That's harsh." "It's accurate. We've valued different things from childhood. You cultivated social capital. I built intellectual capital. Neither approach is inherently wrong, but they led us down very different paths." Our appetizers arrived, providing a momentary reprieve from intensity. Maya took a deliberate bite of her salad, chewed thoughtfully, then set down her fork. "Darius's father asked about you yesterday." I raised an eyebrow. "Oh, he wanted to know more about my entrepreneurial sister. Apparently, Mr. Blackwood mentioned your company at their golf game." She gave a short, humorless laugh. The irony wasn't lost on me, given what I said at the engagement party. And what did you tell him? The truth, that you built something remarkable while I wasn't paying attention. She met my gaze directly. And that I was wrong about you. Very wrong. The admission hung between us, weightier than expected. I took a sip of water, considering my response. Being wrong isn't the problem, Maya. We're all wrong sometimes. It's refusing to see beyond our preconceptions that limits us. When did you get so wise? Her attempt at levity fell flat. Around the same time, I stopped measuring my worth through other people's perceptions. The main courses arrived, steam rising from perfectly plated creations. We ate in silence for several minutes, the background murmur of the restaurant filling the space between us. Tell me about the beginning, Maya said eventually. How did you start Altura? I set down my fork, memories surfacing like bubbles, in still water. You remember when I was working at Technos? She nodded vaguely. That big tech firm downtown? You were there for what, 2 years? 3. I was developing internal systems for their client management division. Efficient but uninspired work. I paused, recalling the fluorescent-lit cubicle where I'd spent countless hours. One day, I identified a fundamental flaw in how enterprise systems handled predictive maintenance across multiple platforms. I brought it to my supervisor with a proposed solution. And they loved it? Maya guessed. They dismissed it. Said it was too ambitious, too resource-intensive, too risky. I smiled faintly. What they meant was too disruptive to their comfortable processes. So you quit? Not immediately. I spent 6 months refining the concept after hours, building, proof-of-concept models, researching market needs. I approached 3 different supervisors. All 3 gave the same response. That's not how we do things here. Maya frowned. That must have been frustrating. It was clarifying. I realized I could spend years trying to change a system from within, or I could build a new system entirely. I took another bite of sea bass, savoring the delicate flavor. I gave notice the following week, cashed out my modest savings, rented a tiny office with questionable heating, and started building. Weren't you scared? Maya looked genuinely curious, terrified. I had 6 months of living expenses saved, and no guarantee of success. Mom thought I was having a quarter-life crisis. Dad suggested I reconsider my stable job with benefits. I shrugged. But the alternative, spending my life implementing other people's limited visions, scared me more. I never knew that. You never asked. The simple truth landed without accusation. Maya nodded slowly, acknowledging the point. The first year was brutal, I continued. 18-hour days, ramen dinners, cold calls to potential clients who couldn't understand why they should trust their systems to a solo founder working from what was essentially a glorified closet. What changed? I did. I set down my fork. I stopped apologizing for my vision, stopped qualifying my expertise, stopped making myself smaller to make others comfortable. I showed up as exactly who I was, a woman who understood complex systems and how to make them better. Maya studied me with new awareness. And clients responded to that? Some did, some didn't. But I stopped wasting energy on those who couldn't see value in what I offered. I smiled slightly. Quality over quantity, in clients, in employees, in relationships. She absorbed this with unusual thoughtfulness. I've never approached anything that way. I've always cast the widest net possible, friends, connections, opportunities. Different strategies for different goals. I signaled for the check. Neither is inherently superior, they just yield different results. After settling the bill, I insisted despite her protests, we walked together toward the parking area. The evening air carried the scent of nearby gardens and distant ocean. Can I see it? Maya asked suddenly. Your office. The real one, not just the reception area. I hesitated, surprised by the request. Maya had never shown interest in my professional world beyond surface appearances. It's nearly 9. Most people will have gone home. All the better. I want to see where you work, where you built all this. I considered refusing, establishing a boundary between personal reconciliation and professional access. But something in her expression, an earnestness I hadn't seen since we were children, made me reconsider. All right, follow me in your car. It's about 10 minutes from here. The Altura offices occupied 3 floors of a sleek building in the Innovation District. At night, the glass facade reflected city lights like a dark mirror. The security guard nodded as we entered, familiar with my evening returns. Evening, Ms. Reyes. Working late again? Just showing my sister around, Marco. We won't be long. The elevator carried us silently to the 12th floor. I scanned my badge, and the doors opened to Altura's main workspace. At this hour, the open concept office was mostly empty. A few developers still hunched over screens in the distance, the soft glow of emergency lighting illuminating the path between workstations. This is bigger than I expected, Maya said, taking in the expanse of desks, meeting pods, and collaboration spaces. We expanded to this floor last year. The engineering team is 1 level up. Operations and client services are below. I led her through the quiet office, pointing out different team areas, the kitchen stocked with healthy snacks, the wellness room where employees could rest or meditate. Maya followed silently, absorbing details with uncharacteristic focus. Finally, we reached my office in the corner, glass-walled but private, with views of the bay on one side and the city skyline on the other. Unlike the minimalist modernity of the main workspace, my office contained personal touches. A small collection of crystals my first developer had given me for startup luck, a vintage astronomical chart I'd found at a street fair, a bookshelf filled with technical manuals and philosophy texts. Maya walked slowly around the room, trailing her fingers lightly over surfaces. It feels like you. Somehow both organized and creative. Function with purpose. That's always been my approach. She stopped at my desk, where 3 framed photos stood. One of our parents from their 30th anniversary, one of the original Altura team of 4 people crowded around a single desk, and one of a sunset over the Pacific. No pictures of us together, she observed quietly. No recent ones worth displaying. She nodded, accepting the truth without argument. We used to be close, before. Everything. Before you decided who I was without bothering to discover who I was becoming, I corrected gently. Maya turned to face me fully. I'm sorry, Elena. Not just for what I said at the engagement party, for years of not seeing you. Why now? I leaned against the doorframe, maintaining emotional distance despite her apparent sincerity. Because you discovered I'm successful? Because your fiancé's boss respects me? Would you be here if none of that had happened? Her expression faltered. I'd like to think so, but honestly, I don't know. Finding out about your company was, like, having a curtain pulled back. Suddenly, I could see how narrow my view had been. At least she was honest. I crossed to the window, looking out at the city lights scattered like fallen stars across the darkness. I don't need your approval, Maya. I never did. What hurt wasn't your dismissal. It was that you never bothered to know me before judging me. And now? Now we have a choice. We can maintain polite distance, showing up at family functions with practiced smiles and careful conversation. Or we can try something more authentic. I turned to face her. But authenticity requires effort from both sides. I want to try, she said softly. I really do. Then start by asking questions, real ones. Not about what I do or what I've accomplished, but who I am. What matters to me? What I dream about beyond balance sheets and coding architectures. Maya hesitated, then asked, "Are you happy, Elena? Truly happy?" The question surprised me. Simple, yet profound, and not one I'd been asked in years. I considered it carefully before answering. Most days, yes. I've built something meaningful. I work with people I respect. I solve problems that matter. I smiled faintly. But happiness isn't my primary metric. Purpose is. And in that regard, I'm wealthy beyond measure. She nodded slowly, absorbing this. I've never thought about life that way. It's always been about the next achievement, the next relationship, the next status symbol. And has that brought you happiness? Moments of it, flashes, nothing sustainable. She looked around my office again. Nothing like this quiet certainty you seem to have. Certainty is an illusion, I said. What looks like certainty is actually comfort with uncertainty, knowing I can navigate whatever comes because I've built internal resources that don't depend on external validation. Maya laughed softly. You always were the philosophical one. Even as kids, you questioned everything while I just wanted everyone to like me. Different paths, different destinations. We left my office, walking back through the quiet workspace. Near the elevator, a whiteboard displayed our quarterly objectives alongside a quote, "Success isn't about how much money you make. It's about the difference you make in people's lives." Michelle Obama. Maya read it aloud, then turned to me. Is that how you measure success? It's one metric. There are others. The elevator arrived with a soft chime. Impact, innovation, integrity, the things that remain when accolades fade and trends change. We rode down in contemplative silence. In the lobby, Maya paused before pushing through the revolving door. Thank you. For dinner. For this. She gestured vaguely at the building around us. For giving me a second chance when you had every reason not to. Everyone deserves the opportunity to evolve, Maya. Even sisters who call you pathetic losers at engagement parties. She winced, but accepted the barb with a nod. Can we do this again? Maybe not immediately, but soon? I'd like that. And, surprisingly, I meant it. Outside, the night air had cooled. Stars peeked through thin cloud cover, distant but constant. Maya hugged me. Not her usual performative embrace, but something more genuine, more hesitant. I'm proud of you, she whispered. Not because of what you've built, but because of who you've become while building it. She stepped back, looking slightly embarrassed by her own sincerity. Good night, Elena. I watched her walk to her car, designer heels clicking against concrete, shoulders straighter than when she'd arrived. As her taillights disappeared around the corner, I remained standing outside my building, contemplating new beginnings built on old foundations. The following morning, I arrived at the office to find an unexpected delivery on my desk. A small, crystal sculpture of two intertwined figures, abstract but clearly representing connection. The card read simply, "To new beginnings, M." I placed it beside my computer, where light caught its facets and scattered tiny rainbows across my keyboard. A small gesture, but perhaps a meaningful one. 3 weeks passed in a blur of client meetings, code reviews, and strategic planning sessions. The Meridian contract moved into implementation phase, with teams formed and timelines established. I worked late most evenings, as was my habit during critical project launches. One Thursday night, as I reviewed deployment schedules in my quiet office, my phone rang with an unknown number. Elena Reyes speaking. Ms. Reyes, this is Darius Whitney. The voice was formal, slightly nervous. Maya's fiancé. I straightened in my chair. Yes, Mr. Whitney. What can I do for you? I'm calling to apologize. He cleared his throat. For the engagement party. For not correcting Maya's characterization of you and your work. It was disrespectful, and I should have said something. The apology was unexpected. I remained silent, letting him fill the space. Maya told me about your dinner together, about seeing your company. She's been different since then. Reflective. She talks about you differently now. I appreciate the call, Mr. Whitney, but I don't hold you responsible for Maya's words. Perhaps not, but I'm responsible for my silence. He paused. There's another reason I'm calling. My father was impressed by what Mr. Blackwood shared about your company. He's interested in discussing potential applications for our development projects. Would you be open to a meeting? Business interest, not just personal amends. I considered briefly before responding. I'd be happy to meet with your father. Have him contact my office to arrange a time. Excellent. And one more thing. Maya and I are hosting a small dinner next weekend. Nothing formal, just close friends and family. She'd very much like you to come. I'll check my calendar, I said neutrally. Please do. And Ms. Reyes? Thank you for giving Maya another chance. She needs people who see her clearly, not just those who see what she wants to show. After we disconnected, I sat contemplating the call. People revealing themselves to be more complex than initial impressions suggested. A reminder I needed occasionally, despite my own experiences with being misjudged. The dinner invitation arrived formally the next day. Tasteful, but not ostentatious, requesting my presence at Darius and Maya's home that Saturday. I texted my acceptance, curious about this new chapter in our evolving relationship. Saturday evening found me ascending the steps to a modern townhouse in an upscale neighborhood, not as lavish as the Whitney's family estate, but impressive nonetheless. I carried a small gift, a rare first edition of Mindstorms by Seymour, paper that I'd found at a specialist bookstore. A meaningful token for me, though perhaps enigmatic to Maya. She opened the door herself, looking both elegant and somehow softer than usual in a simple blue dress. Elena, you came. The relief in her voice was genuine. I said I would. I handed her the carefully wrapped book, a housewarming gift. Inside, the gathering was indeed intimate, perhaps 15 people in total, engaged in quiet conversation around a stylishly appointed living room. I recognized Darius's parents, a few family friends, and to my surprise, James Blackwood and his wife. Darius approached with 2 glasses of wine, offering one to me. Thank you for coming, Elena. It means a lot to Maya. It's a lovely home, I said, accepting the glass. Mostly Maya's doing. I just nodded and provided the credit card. He smiled self-deprecatingly. Mr. Blackwood was pleased to hear you'd be here. He's become quite the advocate for Altura's approach. Across the room, Maya was showing an older couple around the space. She caught my eye and smiled. A real smile, not her practiced social expression. I raised my glass slightly in acknowledgement. As I circulated through the gathering, I noticed something unexpected. Maya introduced me consistently as my sister Elena, the founder and CEO of Altura Technologies. No dismissive qualifiers, no diminishing context, just simple acknowledgement of who I was. During dinner, a catered affair served at a long table with elegant simplicity, conversation flowed naturally between business, current events, and personal anecdotes. I found myself engaged in a fascinating discussion about neural networks with Mrs. Blackwood, who apparently held a PhD in computational linguistics. Halfway through the main course, Darius tapped his glass gently. If I could have everyone's attention for a moment. The table quieted, faces turning expectantly toward our host. Maya and I want to thank you all for being here tonight. As we prepare for our wedding and new life together, we're especially grateful for the people who challenge us to be our best selves. His gaze rested briefly on me before continuing. Sometimes the most valuable relationships are those that push us to grow, even when that growth is uncomfortable. Maya reached for his hand, then looked directly at me. To new beginnings, and clearer vision. Glasses raised around the table. I lifted mine, meeting my sister's gaze with steady acknowledgement. Not forgiveness exactly, that would come gradually, with consistent action, but openness to possibility. Later, as guests began departing, Maya pulled me aside into a small, study off the main living area. "I have something for you." She opened a drawer and removed a small velvet box. "I found this last week while going through some old things from Mom's house." Inside was a tarnished silver bracelet with a single charm, a tiny book that opened to reveal microscopic pages. I recognized it immediately. Our grandmother had given us matching bracelets on my 10th birthday. Maya had received a star charm, me the book. I'd assumed mine was lost during one of our family moves. "Where did you find this?" I asked, running my finger over the familiar texture. "In a box labeled Elena, keepsakes." Mom had saved it all these years. Maya looked uncharacteristically vulnerable. "I thought you might want it back." I slipped the bracelet onto my wrist, where it settled like a memory made tangible. "Thank you." Maya hesitated, then spoke softly. "I've been thinking about what you said, about measuring worth through external validation. I've done that my whole life, defined myself by how others see me rather than who I actually am." "It's a common trap," I acknowledged, "especially when you're rewarded for it consistently. But it's hollow. I'm realizing that now." She met my gaze directly. "Watching you build something real, something that matters, it's made me question everything I thought was important." "That questioning is valuable, Maya. It's where growth begins." She nodded slowly. "I'm not sure who I am without the performance, but I want to find out." "That's brave," I said simply. We rejoined the remaining guests. The bracelet a small weight on my wrist, a bridge between past and present, reminder of connection that persisted despite years of misunderstanding. As I drove home that night, city lights blurring slightly in the light rain that had begun to fall, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. From pathetic loser to respected entrepreneur in my sister's eyes, though I had been the same person all along. The real transformation wasn't in how Maya saw me, but in how I had learned to see myself. Not through the distorted mirror of family expectations or societal assumptions, but through the clear lens of my own values and accomplishments. My phone buzzed with a text from Vivian. "Final contract with Meridian signed today. We're official. Celebration Monday?" I smiled and sent a quick affirmative reply before returning my attention to the road ahead. There would be new challenges tomorrow, new problems to solve, new systems to build. But tonight, I allowed myself to simply appreciate the journey. Not just the destination it had led to, but the person I had become while navigating its winding path. The bracelet caught the light as I turned the steering wheel. The tiny book, charm gleaming like a promise kept. The Meridian contract changed everything, not just for Altura, but for me personally. The Monday celebration with my team transformed from a simple toast into an impromptu party that lasted well into the evening. We'd secured our largest deal yet, one that would put us on the industry map in ways I'd only dreamed of during those early days working from my converted dining room. "To Elena," Vivian raised her glass, eyes bright with pride and something deeper, vindication. Who saw possibilities where others saw obstacles? The team cheered, clinking glasses around our conference table now crowded with champagne flutes and takeout containers. 28 faces looked back at me, each representing a deliberate choice I'd made to build not just a company, but a community of brilliance. "To Altura," I corrected gently, "which belongs to all of us." I surveyed the room, developers who'd taken chances on a startup when they had offers from Google and Facebook, account managers who'd believed in our vision enough to bring their client relationships with them, designers who'd shaped our identity with meticulous care. This milestone belongs to everyone in this room. After the celebration wound down and the office quieted, I remained at my desk, reviewing the implementation timeline for the Meridian project. A text message illuminated my phone screen. Heard about the big contract. Congratulations. Dinner. This weekend to celebrate? Maya. I stared at the message, remembering the bracelet now resting on my nightstand at home. The tiny book charm had become a symbol of something unexpected, not just reconciliation, but recognition. My finger hovered over the keyboard before I typed. Thanks. Sunday works. Your place or mine? Her response came quickly. Yours. I'd love to see where my successful sister lives when she's not changing the tech world. I smiled despite myself. Sunday at 7. I'll cook. That night, driving home to my hillside apartment overlooking the bay, I reflected on the strange trajectory that had brought me here. 6 years ago, I'd sat in a cubicle, watching my innovations disappear into corporate quicksand. 4 years ago, I'd maxed out my credit cards to make payroll during a precarious second quarter. 2 years ago, I'd finally started paying myself a salary that reflected my market value. And now, Altura was becoming a name that opened doors, created opportunities, and apparently, rebuilt bridges I'd assumed were permanently burned. The weekend arrived with unusual clarity for early autumn. Skies washed clean by overnight rain, sunlight gilding everything it touched. I spent Saturday morning at the farmer's market, selecting ingredients with the same methodical care I applied to code architecture. Fresh heirloom tomatoes, basil from the woman who grew 15 varieties, artisanal sourdough from the bakery that had survived 3 generations. Sunday would be simple but deliberate, like everything else in my life. Maya arrived exactly on time, a new development in our relationship. She carried a bottle of wine and a small gift bag. Your building is gorgeous, she said, stepping into my apartment, though I should have expected nothing less. The view sold me. I gestured toward the wall of windows framing the bay, now painted in sunset hues of amber and rose. I never tire of watching the light change. My apartment was minimalist but warm, open concept with clean lines, natural materials, and carefully chosen art. Books lined custom shelves, their spines forming a colorful mosaic against white walls. A baby grand piano occupied one corner, my indulgence and therapy during stressful quarters. Maya moved through the space slowly, taking in details. It feels like you, she said finally. Intentional. Nothing wasted, nothing superfluous, but still beautiful. Thank you. I accepted the wine, an excellent vintage, I noted, and led her to the kitchen where ingredients waited in organized mise en place. I thought we'd make dinner together. You always were better at chopping than I was. She laughed, surprised. You remember that? From Mom's cooking lessons? You had the patience for perfect julienne. I was always rushing to the next step. Some things never change. She set down the gift bag and reached for an apron I'd laid out. Put me to work, CEO. We fell into an unexpected rhythm, Maya chopping vegetables with practiced precision, while I prepared the pasta dough from scratch. The kitchen filled with the scent of fresh herbs and garlic sautéing in olive oil. We talked about safe topics initially, her wedding plans, my upcoming industry keynote, a documentary series we'd both coincidentally started watching. As I rolled out pasta sheets for ravioli, Maya sipped her wine and watched my hands work. Remember when we made Christmas cookies with Grandma Rivera? She asked suddenly. You always insisted on measuring everything exactly, and I just wanted to add more sprinkles. I smiled at the memory. You once put so much red food coloring in the frosting that everyone's tongues were stained for days. Mom was furious. Maya laughed, but Grandma thought it was hilarious. Grandma understood the value of occasionally coloring outside the lines. I began cutting perfect circles in the pasta sheet, something I had to relearn when I started. Altura, Maya raised an eyebrow. You? Breaking rules? Innovation requires it. The existing frameworks couldn't accommodate what I wanted to build. I had to create new ones. I arranged ricotta filling on each circle. That's what entrepreneurs do. We see the limitations of existing systems and imagine alternatives. I've never created anything from scratch, Maya said quietly. Not really. I've always operated within established structures, corporate ladders, social hierarchies, relationship scripts. It's never too late to start, I handed her a pasta cutter. Beginning with dinner. By the time we sat down to eat, the conversation had evolved from polite exchange to something approaching genuine connection. Maya talked about her marketing work, not just the glamorous client meetings and campaign launches, but the creative process behind them. I shared stories from Altura's early days, sleeping under my desk during critical deployments, pitching to investors who couldn't pronounce my company's name correctly, the exhilaration of our first major client signing. I brought you something, Maya said as we cleared dishes. She retrieved the gift bag she'd brought and handed it to me. It's not much, but I thought you might appreciate it. Inside was a leather-bound journal, its cover embossed with a simple geometric design. It's beautiful, I said, running my fingers over the smooth surface. Open it. The first page contained a handwritten quote. The most powerful woman in the room is not the loudest. She's the one who knows when to speak and when to listen. Below it, Maya had written, I'm finally ready to listen. Thank you for being patient until I was ready. I looked up, meeting her eyes. Thank you. I meant what I said at Darius's dinner. I'm trying to figure out who I am beyond the performance. She twisted her engagement ring, a nervous habit I'd noticed developing. It's harder than I expected. Identity reconstruction usually is. I closed the journal gently. Especially when you've invested years in a particular version of yourself. How did you become so secure in who you are? I considered the question carefully. Necessity. When you're building something from nothing, you can't afford the energy it takes to maintain facades. Authenticity becomes efficient as well as fulfilling. Even when people dismiss you? Call you names? Her reference to her own cruel words at the engagement party hung between us. Those moments clarify who's worth your attention and who isn't. I placed the journal on my bookshelf, where it fit as if it had always belonged there. The opinions that matter come from people who see you clearly, not through their own projections. Maya was quiet for a moment, then said, I'd like to see you clearly now, if you'll let me. I'd like that too. After she left, I stood at my windows watching city lights reflect on dark water. The conversation had been neither perfect nor complete, too many years of misunderstanding to unravel in a single evening, but it felt like solid ground being established beneath our feet. Not the foundation we'd started with as children, but something new we were building deliberately as adults. The following weeks brought intense focus on the Meridian implementation. I worked closely with their operations team, establishing workflows and training protocols. The collaboration progressed smoothly, with Blackwood himself occasionally joining status meetings to observe our methodology. Your approach is refreshingly direct, he commented after one particularly productive session. No unnecessary complexity, no hiding behind technical jargon. Obfuscation serves no one, I replied, especially in systems designed to create clarity. He nodded appreciatively. A philosophy more of my peers should adopt. As the project evolved, so did my tentative reconnection with Maya. We established a weekly coffee meeting, sometimes brief check-ins between her client presentations and my development sprints, other times longer conversations that revealed layers of each other we'd never fully explored. During one such meeting, Maya mentioned casually, Darius's father asked if you'd consider joining the technology advisory board for Whitney Developments. Apparently, your work with Meridian has made quite an impression. I stirred my cappuccino thoughtfully. That's flattering, but my focus needs to remain on Altura right now. We're entering a critical growth phase. He said you'd say that. Maya smiled, but also suggested the perspective would be valuable for both sides. No pressure, just something to consider. I'll think about it. That's all he asked. She hesitated, then added, It's strange, you know. For years, I was the one making connections, building networks, being the face person. Now you're the one people want to know. Different kinds of networks serve different purposes, I pointed out. Yours were social, mine are functional. Still, it's an adjustment. She sipped her coffee. A good one, though. Watching you operate in your element, it's impressive, Elena, truly. Coming from Maya, who had spent a lifetime curating impressions rather than acknowledging them, the simple compliment carried unexpected weight. October brought Darius and Maya's wedding, a more subdued affair than the engagement party had been. The ceremony took place at a historic estate with views of the mountains, autumn foliage creating a natural backdrop of copper and gold. I attended alone, wearing a deep emerald dress that complemented the seasonal palette. The ceremony was brief but meaningful, with personalized vows that revealed a depth to their relationship I hadn't previously recognized. Maya spoke of learning to see beyond surfaces. Darius promised to support her evolving authentic self. Perhaps they had more substance than I'd given them credit for. At the reception, I found myself seated at a table with James Blackwood and several executives I recognized from industry events. The conversation flowed easily between business trends and personal interests. No one questioned my presence or expertise, a marked contrast to family gatherings of the past. During the dancing that followed dinner, I stood watching from the periphery, content in my observer role. Maya approached, radiant in her wedding gown but with a groundedness I hadn't seen before. Not dancing? She asked, joining me at the edge of the dance floor. Just enjoying the moment. I smiled. You look beautiful and happy. I am, both. She glanced around the room. Thank you for coming. I know these events aren't your favorite. I wouldn't have missed it. Maya was quiet for a moment, watching the dancers. Do you remember Mom's favorite saying? About how life doesn't give second chances? You get one shot to make a first impression, I quoted. She said it before every school year, every job interview, every date. I believed that for so long, that if people saw me as anything less than perfect, I'd lose my value. She turned to face me directly. But you've proven that wrong. You've shown that rebuilding relationships, perceptions, even identities, is possible. Difficult, but possible. The quality of the reconstruction often exceeds the original. Structure, I said, when it's built with awareness rather than assumption. Is that what we're doing? Reconstructing? I think so. Though the blueprint looks different than it did before. She nodded, understanding the architectural metaphor. I like the new design better. Later that evening, as the celebration continued, I found myself in conversation with Marcus Whitney, Darius's father. A commanding presence with shrewd eyes and deliberate speech, he reminded me of the venture capitalists I'd pitched to during Altura's seed round. My son tells me you declined the advisory position, he said without preamble. I expressed concerns about bandwidth given Altura's current trajectory, I clarified. Not an outright refusal. Diplomatic. He smiled slightly. James Blackwood speaks highly of your approach. Says you build systems that anticipate human behavior rather than fight against it. That's the intention. Technology should enhance human capability, not replace or restrict it. A philosophy with applications beyond software. He studied me with newfound interest. Whitney Developments is expanding our smart building initiatives, the intersection of physical space and digital intelligence. Your perspective would be valuable, even on a limited consulting basis. I'd be happy to review specific projects where my expertise might apply, I offered, without a formal board commitment at this stage. A reasonable compromise. He extended his hand. My office will be in touch. As I drove home that night, the full moon illuminated coastal roads with silver light. I reflected on the strange circularity of the evening, attending my sister's wedding not as the forgotten sibling, but as a respected professional whose connection had value beyond familial obligation. The transformation wasn't just in how others perceived me, but in the ecosystem of relationships now developing on more authentic ground. November brought unexpected recognition when the Regional Business Journal named me among their 40 under 40 innovators transforming the technology landscape. The accompanying profile highlighted Altura's rapid growth and distinctive approach to enterprise systems. The photo shoot took place in our offices, capturing me among my team rather than isolated in executive portraiture. The morning the issue was published, I received a text from Maya. Picked up 3 copies already. My sister, the magazine cover girl. Dinner to celebrate? We met at a small bistro near the waterfront, the kind of place that prioritized flavor over presentation. Maya arrived carrying the magazine, her expression genuinely delighted. This is major, Elena, and the profile actually captures what makes Altura special. Not just another tech company, but a fundamentally different approach. She opened to the article, pointing to a quote they'd highlighted. We don't build systems that tell humans what to do. We build systems that learn what humans need. That's brilliant positioning. It's not positioning. It's our actual philosophy. I smiled to soften the correction. But thank you. It's nice to see our work recognized. Have you shown Mom and Dad? Not yet. I hesitated. They still don't quite understand what I do. Maya set down her fork. They should, especially now. She considered something, then added, What if we host a family dinner at my place? Nothing fancy, just an opportunity for you to share what you've built. I could help translate the technical aspects if needed. The offer, Maya using her communication skills to amplify rather than overshadow my work, represented a shift so fundamental I almost missed its significance. That would be nice, I said simply. Thank you. The family dinner happened the following weekend. Maya had prepared thoughtfully, setting up a small screen where I could show a simplified presentation about Altura's work. Our parents arrived, with cautious curiosity, clearly uncertain about this new dynamic between their daughters. Elena's company was just featured in the Business Journal, Maya announced as she served appetizers. She's been recognized as one of the most innovative leaders in the industry. Dad looked up with surprise. The computer work you've been doing? They put that in magazines? It's a bit more than computer work, Dad. I smiled to soften the correction. We build intelligent systems that help large organizations operate more efficiently. Like what Rosita's son does with the IT department? Mom asked, reaching for a reference point she could understand. Not exactly. I glanced at Maya, who nodded encouragingly. Let me show you what we actually do. For the next 20 minutes, I walked them through a simplified explanation of Altura's core technology, using real-world examples they could relate to. Maya occasionally interjected with clarifying analogies that bridged the technical concepts with familiar experiences. So, your computers predict when things will break before they actually break? Dad asked, beginning to engage. Essentially, yes. We analyze patterns in how systems operate, identify early warning signs of potential failures, and recommend preventive action before critical breakdowns occur. Like how Maya always knows when the car needs maintenance before the warning. Light comes on, Mom said, making the connection. Exactly like that, Maya confirmed. Elena has built an entire company around that kind of predictive intelligence, but for massive systems that run hospitals, manufacturing plants, and real estate developments. And people pay a lot of money for this? Dad asked, practical, as always. They do, I smiled, because it saves them even more in the long run. By the end of dinner, my parents were asking questions that reflected genuine interest rather than polite obligation. Mom wanted to know how many people worked for me. Dad asked about the business model and growth strategy. They weren't fully grasping the technical nuances, but they were engaging with the reality of what I'd built, rather than the vague concept they'd dismissed for years. As we cleared dishes, Mom pulled me aside in the kitchen. "I'm sorry we didn't understand before," she said quietly. "Your sister always did things we recognized. Parties, promotions, dating the right men. Your work was invisible to us. It's all right, Mom. Some things need to be explained differently for different audiences. Still, we should have tried harder to see." She squeezed my hand. "I'm proud of you, Mija. Not just because of the magazine or the important clients, but because you built something true to who you are." The simple acknowledgement, years delayed but finally offered, settled into a place inside me that had remained stubbornly empty despite professional success. Later, as Maya walked me to my car, the night air crisp with approaching winter, she said, "Thank you for giving them another chance too." "Family is complicated," I replied. "We all get caught in patterns that are hard to break, but not impossible." She hugged me, a real embrace, not the air kisses of our previous adult relationship. "See you for coffee Tuesday?" "I'll be there." Driving home, I reflected on the strange journey of the past few months, from pathetic loser at an Dachi engagement party to featured innovator whose work commanded respect. The external validation wasn't what mattered most, though. It was the internal alignment. The freedom of being recognized for exactly who I was, rather than constantly translating myself into terms others could accept. The following week brought the final implementation phase of the Meridian project. Our teams worked seamlessly together, the system integrating with their existing infrastructure while enhancing capabilities beyond original specifications. The success strengthened our position for expansion into adjacent markets. During the final review meeting, James Blackwood pulled me aside. "This has exceeded expectations, Ms. Reyes. Meridian is considering implementing your system across our international portfolio as well." "We'd welcome the opportunity," I responded, "though we'd need to scale our support infrastructure accordingly." "I have no doubt you'll manage that challenge as elegantly as you've handled everything else." He paused, then added, "Marcus Whitney speaks highly of your consultation on their smart building initiative. It seems you've made quite an impression on that family." "They've been supportive of our work," I said diplomatically. "Yes, well." His eyes showed amusement. "Quite a journey from just the pathetic loser sister, wouldn't you say?" I stiffened, surprised by the direct reference to Maya's cruel comment months earlier. Blackwood continued, "My wife and I were seated near your family table that night. I found it curious then, the disconnect between the dismissive characterization and what our preliminary research had suggested about your company. It's one reason I was particularly interested in meeting you properly." "I appreciate that interest, regardless of its catalyst," I replied carefully. "Family dynamics are complex territories." He smiled slightly. "But in business, results speak for themselves. Yours certainly have." That evening, I sat on my balcony watching twilight settle over the bay, Blackwood's words echoing in my mind. Results speak for themselves. Perhaps that had always been true in my professional world, where measurable outcomes trumped perception. The challenge had been in my personal sphere, where narratives once established proved stubbornly resistant to revision. Yet even those had shifted, not through dramatic confrontation or public vindication, but through consistent authenticity and the quiet power of undeniable reality. I hadn't needed to proclaim my worth. I had simply continued building it until it became impossible to ignore. My phone vibrated with an incoming message from Vivian. Final numbers from Q3 just confirmed. We've exceeded projections by 32%. Team celebration tomorrow? I smiled and typed my response. Absolutely. This one's worth celebrating. As the city lights began to emerge against the darkening sky, I felt a profound sense of alignment between who I was and how I was seen, between what I valued and what I created, between the path I'd chosen and the destination it had revealed. The journey hadn't been linear or easy. It had required resilience through misunderstanding, confidence during dismissal, and grace in reconciliation. But that was the nature of building anything worthwhile, whether it was a company, a relationship, or a life authentic to one's deepest values. The bracelet with its tiny book charm caught the last light of day as I lifted my hand. Some stories end with dramatic confrontation, public vindication, the satisfying crash of bridges burning behind triumphant heroes. But others, perhaps the more meaningful ones, conclude with quieter revelations. Bridges rebuilt on stronger foundations, relationships reconfigured with greater integrity, and the profound peace that comes from being recognized not for who others wanted you to be, but for who you truly are. A text illuminated my phone. Working on seating chart for Whitney Development's holiday gala. Saving you a place at the VIP table. Maya. I smiled and typed back, looking forward to it. The transformation wasn't in becoming someone new, but in being fully seen as who I'd always been. Not a pathetic loser, not just a bookkeeper, not an invisible support character in someone else's narrative, but the architect of my own story, building exactly the life I'd envisioned, brick by patient brick, until it stood complete enough for even the most dismissive eyes to finally see. The Whitney Development's holiday gala transformed the historic Bellamy Hotel into a winter wonderland. Crystal chandeliers draped with silver garlands, white orchids cascading from mercury glass vases, ice sculptures catching light in prismatic displays. I arrived alone, my midnight blue gown simple but impeccably tailored, hair swept into an architectural updo that complemented my minimalist aesthetic. Ms. Reyes. The event coordinator greeted me with professional warmth. Mr. Whitney requested you be seated at the central table. May I show you the way? I followed her through the crowd, nodding at familiar faces, industry colleagues, potential clients, a few journalists who had covered Altura's recent expansion. The VIP table Maya had mentioned turned out to be the most prominent in the room, positioned near the small stage where speeches would later take place. Marcus Whitney rose as I approached, extending his hand. Elena, glad you could join us. Thank you for the invitation. I accepted his greeting with the quiet confidence I'd cultivated through countless business functions. No longer the woman who'd fade into backgrounds or apologize for taking space. James Blackwood and his wife were already seated, along with the CEOs of 3 major development firms. Maya and Darius arrived moments later, she in a champagne-colored gown that complemented, rather than overwhelmed her natural beauty. I noticed subtle changes in her presentation, elegant but less ostentatious jewelry, makeup that enhanced rather than transformed her features, a genuine smile replacing her practiced one. Elena. She embraced me warmly, then stepped back, to make introductions where needed. No qualifying remarks about my profession, no subtle undermining, just simple respect. During dinner, conversation flowed naturally between personal interests and professional developments. I found myself engaged in a fascinating discussion about the future of smart infrastructure with the CEO of a sustainable building materials company. The challenge isn't technical anymore, he was saying, it's philosophical. People resist systems they don't understand or trust. That's precisely why transparent design matters, I responded. When users comprehend how a system works and see genuine value, resistance dissolves naturally. Exactly what I was telling the board last quarter, Marcus Whitney interjected, which is why we've implemented your consultation recommendations across our new development in the Harbor District. The conversation shifted to specifics of that implementation, with others at the table contributing perspectives from their respective fields. I caught Maya watching me with a curious expression, not jealousy, but something more complex. Recognition, perhaps. Appreciation. After dinner, before the formal presentations began, she pulled me aside near an elaborate ice sculpture of the Whitney Development's logo. "Look at you," she said softly. "Commanding the room without even trying." "Hardly commanding," I demurred, "just contributing to the conversation." "No, it's more than that." She sipped her champagne thoughtfully. "They respect you, not because of your title or connections, but because of your ideas, your substance." "Ideas and substance have always mattered in the right contexts," I pointed out. "You're just seeing me in those contexts now rather than family gatherings where they're less visible." "Maybe." She considered this. "Or maybe I'm finally seeing with clearer eyes." A small orchestra began playing, signaling the transition to the program portion of the evening. We returned to our table as Marcus Whitney approached the podium. His speech began with standard annual achievements: projects completed, partnerships formed, financial targets exceeded. Then it took an unexpected turn. "Innovation isn't just about building taller, faster, or more efficiently," he said, his voice carrying easily through the ballroom. "It's about reimagining what's possible within existing constraints." This year, Whitney Developments has embraced a new philosophy of integrated systems thinking, influenced significantly by our collaboration with Altura Technologies. A slide appeared behind him showing the Harbor District development, a stunning mixed-use complex with living green walls and transparent solar collection panels. "I'd like to invite Elena Reyes, founder and CEO of Altura, to share how her approach to predictive systems is reshaping not just how we maintain our developments, but how we conceptualize them from the ground up." The invitation caught me by surprise. I hadn't prepared remarks, hadn't expected to be spotlighted. But years of investor pitches and client presentations had trained me to speak articulately on my core expertise with minimal preparation. I approached the podium with measured confidence, taking a moment to survey the room. Hundreds of industry leaders, potential partners, and media representatives. The audience Maya had always thrived in, where I had historically felt most foreign. "Thank you, Mr. Whitney," I began. "The built environment has traditionally been static, responding to problems only after they emerge. But what if our buildings could anticipate needs before they become obvious? What if infrastructure could adapt to usage patterns in real time, optimizing resources automatically?" For the next 6 minutes, I outlined the philosophy behind Altura's approach, not just the technical architecture, but the human-centered design principles that made our systems intuitive and effective. I spoke without slides or notes, using simple language to convey complex concepts, making the revolutionary seem not just possible but inevitable. When I concluded, the applause was immediate and substantial. As I returned to my seat, James Blackwood leaned over. "Perfectly articulated. You have a gift for making the complex accessible without oversimplification." "High praise coming from you," I acknowledged with a small smile. Maya squeezed my hand under the table, a wordless expression of pride. The gesture reminded me of our childhood, before competition replaced connection, when we'd silently celebrate each other's small victories against parental expectations or school challenges. Later that evening, as the formal program concluded and the event transitioned to networking, I found myself approached by a steady stream of industry leaders interested in Altura's capabilities. I navigated these conversations with practiced ease, neither overselling nor underselling what we could deliver. Near the dessert station, I encountered Regina Blackwood, James's wife, and apparently a former professor of computational linguistics who'd transitioned to private research. "That was an exceptional presentation," she said, selecting a Petit Four from an elaborate display, particularly given the lack of preparation time. "Thank you. Years of investor pitches have taught me to articulate our core value proposition concisely. It's more than that." She studied me with academic precision. "You have a rare ability to translate between worlds, technical and practical, innovation and implementation, visionary and pragmatic. That's valuable beyond measure in an industry that often fails at such translation." The observation was unexpectedly perceptive. I've had to develop that skill out of necessity. Building bridges between disparate perspectives is essential to what we do. "Indeed," she smiled. "James mentioned you were considering the advisory position with Whitney Developments. I hope you'll accept. Boards like that would benefit from your particular lens." The conversation shifted to her research on language pattern recognition, a field with interesting parallels to Altura's work in behavioral prediction. We were deep in discussion about algorithmic bias when Maya approached, now accompanied by our parents who had apparently arrived while I was speaking. "Mom, Dad," I greeted them with surprise. "I didn't know you were coming tonight." "Maya insisted," Mom said, elegant in a simple black dress I'd never seen before. "Said we shouldn't miss seeing our daughter shine." "And she was right," Dad added, uncharacteristically emotional. "That speech you gave, I may not understand all the technical details, but I understood the vision. It was incredible, mija." The pride in his voice, pure and unqualified, caught me off guard. For decades, I'd translated myself for their understanding, minimizing my work to fit their framework. Now they were stretching to meet me where I actually stood. "Thank you," I said simply. "That means a lot." Regina Blackwood gracefully excused herself, leaving us in a small family circle amid the glittering crowd. Maya, sensing the significance of the moment, guided us to a quieter corner where conversation could flow more naturally. "We've been watching the Business Journal articles," Mom said, "and the video interviews online. Your father has been showing them to everyone at his office, even though I still don't understand half of what you're saying," Dad joked. "But I understand enough to be very proud." The simple acknowledgement, so long withheld, so freely given now, filled a space inside me I hadn't realized still needed filling. External validation had ceased being my metric for success years ago, but family recognition still carried its own unique weight. The evening continued with more networking, more conversations about potential collaborations, more opportunities, unfolding with each exchange. By the time the event concluded, I had 6 follow-up meetings scheduled with potential clients and partners. Outside, waiting for the valet to bring my car, I stood beside Maya and Darius under the hotel's elegant portico. The December air carried a crisp chill that complemented the holiday decorations illuminating the entrance. "Thank you for making sure Mom and Dad came tonight," I said quietly to Maya. "They needed to see you in your element." She adjusted her wrap against the cool breeze. We all did. They seemed genuinely impressed. They were. Dad kept saying, "He had no idea your computer stuff was so important." She smiled. "Though he still doesn't quite grasp what predictive analytics actually means." "Few people do until they see it in action," I acknowledged. "That's why demonstration projects like the harbor development matter so much." Darius, who had been checking messages on his phone, looked up. "Speaking of which, Father wants to fast-track the implementation based on tonight's response. Several potential investors expressed interest specifically because of the Altura integration. We can accommodate an accelerated timeline," I responded, mind already calculating resource allocation and team assignments. "I'll have Vivian contact your project manager tomorrow." My car arrived, sleek and understated like everything else in my carefully curated life. As the valet opened the door, Maya stepped forward and embraced me. Not the air kiss of social obligation, but the genuine hug of reconnected sisterhood. "I'm so proud to be your sister," she whispered. "Not because of your success, but because of how you achieved it. With integrity, with vision, without compromise." The words, from the person who had once dismissed me as a pathetic loser, carried a weight of reconciliation beyond anything formal apologies could have achieved. Not because I needed her approval, but because it represented the completion of a circle. Being seen accurately by someone who had once seen me through the distorted lens of her own insecurities. "Thank you, Maya," I said simply. "That matters." Driving home along the coastal highway, city lights reflecting on dark water to my right, I reflected on the strange journey that had brought me here. Not just the professional ascent from scrappy startup founder to recognized industry innovator, but the personal evolution from overlooked sister to respected individual. Success hadn't changed who I was. It had simply made me more visibly, undeniably myself. The following morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual, energized rather than depleted by the previous evening's events. Sunrise painted my corner. Office in amber and rose as I reviewed project timelines and resource allocations for the accelerated harbor development implementation. Vivian arrived at 7:30, carrying 2 cups from our favorite local coffee shop. "Heard you made quite an impression last night," she said, placing 1 cup on my desk. "The business development inbox is flooded with meeting requests this morning. Word travels fast. In this industry, at light speed." She settled into the chair across from me. Marcus Whitney's endorsement carries significant weight, as does James Blackwood's. When both recommend something simultaneously, people notice. "The harbor project will be an excellent demonstration platform," I acknowledged, "assuming we deliver as promised." "When have we not?" Vivian smiled confidently. "The team is ready. This is what we've been building toward." She wasn't wrong. From Altura's earliest days, we'd designed our systems with scalability in mind, not just in technical architecture, but in implementation methodology. What had begun as necessity, limited resources requiring efficient processes, had evolved into a competitive advantage. "I'm considering accepting the advisory position with Whitney Developments," I said, testing the idea aloud. "Limited engagement, quarterly meetings, focused specifically on their smart infrastructure initiatives." "Good," Vivian nodded decisively. "Strategic visibility matters at this stage of our growth. The right affiliations open doors we'd otherwise spend years knocking on." My thoughts exactly. We spent the next hour refining implementation timelines and assembling the project team. Altura had grown methodically rather than explosively. Each new hire carefully selected not just for technical skills, but for alignment with our core philosophy. The result was a team that functioned with unusual cohesion, adapting to new challenges with minimal friction. Mid-morning, Thomas appeared at my door. "Your sister is here to see you. She says it's important, but not urgent." I glanced at my calendar, a 60-minute gap before my next meeting. "Send her in." Maya entered looking uncharacteristically casual in jeans and a simple sweater, her usual polished presentation replaced by comfortable authenticity. She carried a large portfolio case. "Sorry to drop in without an appointment," she began, settling into a visitor chair. "But I wanted to share something with you before I lost my nerve." "Intriguing. What is it?" She placed the portfolio on my desk and unzipped it carefully. "For the past few months, I've been thinking a lot about what you said, about creating versus performing, about building something authentic instead of just managing perceptions." From the case, she withdrew a series of marketing boards, professional quality presentations of what appeared to be a comprehensive brand strategy. The header read, "Elevate, making technical excellence visible." "I've been working on this," In my free time, she explained, arranging the boards on my desk. It's a specialized marketing consultancy focused exclusively on translating technical innovation for broader audiences, helping companies like Altura communicate their value beyond technical circles. I examined the materials with growing interest. The strategy was thoughtfully constructed, leveraging Maya's genuine strengths in communication and perception management, but applying them to a more substantive purpose than social positioning. This is impressive, I said honestly. You've identified a real gap in the market. Technical innovators often struggle to articulate their value proposition to non-technical decision-makers. Exactly. Her eyes lit with genuine enthusiasm. I've watched you navigate that challenge, speaking differently to developers versus investors versus end users. Not everyone has that translation ability naturally, but it can be developed with the right guidance. And you're positioning yourself to provide that guidance. She nodded. It's still conceptual. I haven't left my current position or secured any clients. But, she hesitated, I wanted your opinion before proceeding further, not just as my sister, but as someone who's actually built something meaningful from scratch. The request, humble, authentic, respectful of the expertise I'd developed, represented a profound shift in our relationship. Maya wasn't seeking validation or empty encouragement. She wanted substantive feedback from someone she now recognized as having relevant wisdom. I think you've identified a valuable niche, I said, after reviewing the materials more thoroughly. The approach is solid, the positioning distinctive. The question is implementation, how you'll structure initial client engagements to build credibility quickly. That's exactly what I'm struggling with, she admitted. I can envision the end state, but I'm less clear on the path to get there. Start with limited scope projects where you can demonstrate measurable impact, I suggested. Select clients with genuine technical excellence but poor communication of that excellence. Document the before and after metrics rigorously. Maya was taking notes, focused and receptive. What metrics would you prioritize? Sales cycle duration, conversion rate from technical to executive presentations, media coverage quality, not just quantity. I considered further, and testimonials from both technical and non-technical stakeholders about improved mutual understanding. We spent the next 45 minutes dissecting her business model, refining her approach, identifying potential pitfalls. The conversation flowed with unexpected ease, two professionals with complementary expertise exchanging insights rather than two sisters weighted by complicated history. Thank you for this, she said finally, gathering her materials. For taking me seriously, for seeing the potential instead of just the limitations. That's what you've been learning to do for me, I pointed out. See me clearly rather than through preconceived notions. I'm happy to offer the same courtesy. As she prepared to leave, Maya paused at the door. Would you be willing to be my first case study? Not for free. I'd structure a proper engagement with clear deliverables. But having Altura as an initial reference would provide immediate credibility. I considered the proposal from both personal and professional perspectives. Let's do this. Develop a formal proposal outlining specific objectives, methodology, and success metrics. If it aligns with our current priorities, we'll implement it as a pilot project, evaluated objectively like any other business decision. That's perfect. She smiled. Not her practiced social smile, but something more, genuine. Thank you. After she left, I stood at my office window watching the harbor where Whitney's development was taking shape. Steel framework rising against the sky, the bones of something that existed first only in imagination. Maya's nascent business reminded me of Altura's earliest days, the vulnerable period when vision exceeds evidence, when possibilities outweigh proof points. The comparison sparked an unexpected realization. I was now in position to be for Maya what I had needed in those precarious early days. Not a savior or an easy path, but a champion who could see potential through the inevitable imperfections of beginning. The following weeks brought intense focus on the harbor project implementation. My team worked closely with Whitney's architects and engineers, integrating our systems with their physical infrastructure from foundation to facade. What had begun as a standard predictive maintenance solution expanded into a comprehensive approach to building intelligence, environmental response systems, usage pattern optimization, even wayfinding that adapted to individual preferences. During this period, Maya submitted her formal proposal as promised. The document was impressively thorough, demonstrating both research rigor and creative insight. Her suggested approach focused on translating Altura's technical excellence into compelling narratives for different stakeholder groups, from facilities managers to financial decision-makers to end users. After reviewing it with my leadership team, I approved a 3-month pilot engagement. Not as a favor to my sister, but as a strategic investment in an area where we genuinely needed specialized expertise. The technical translation gap costs us opportunities, I explained during our executive meeting. We know our systems deliver exceptional value, but that value isn't always evident to non-technical decision-makers until after implementation. Improving our communication strategy could accelerate growth significantly. Up next, you've got 2 more standout stories right on your screen. If this one hit the mark, you won't want to pass these up. Just click and check them out, and don't forget to subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you don't miss any upload from us.